SpaceX employee argues with Elon Musk, but when he found out who he was, he begged forgiveness and tears. The morning sun was just beginning to peek through the massive windows of SpaceX's Hawthorne facility when Mike Thompson dragged himself through the security checkpoint. His badge scan was met with the usual cheerful beep, but today it felt like it was mocking him. "Rough morning, Mike?" asked Jerry, the security guard who'd been manning this post for as long as anyone could remember. Mike managed a weak smile. "You could say that, Jerry. Remember that saying about bad things coming in threes?" "Hit me with it," Jerry said, leaning forward on his desk with genuine concern. He'd always had a soft spot for the engineers, said they reminded him of his kids, always tinkering with something. Sarah left. Mike's voice cracked slightly. Just packed her bags and left last night. Said she couldn't handle being married to someone who cares more about rockets than his own wife. "Jesus, Mike, I'm so sorry, man." "That's one." Mike held up a finger. "Then this morning I had to rush Max to the emergency vet. My dog?" He added, seeing Jerry's questioning look. "He's been with me since college. Doc says it might be cancer." Jerry shook his head sympathetically. "That's two. What's number three?" Mike adjusted the strap of his laptop bag. "Still waiting on that one, but with my luck today, I'm sure it's coming." "Hey, maybe you've had your share," Jerry offered. "Why don't you take the day off?" "Can't. Big design review today. My team's been working on critical safety modifications for the new Raptor engine configuration. 6 months of work comes down to today." As Mike walked through the facility, familiar faces greeted him with their usual morning enthusiasm. But today, every good morning felt like sandpaper on his raw nerves. He made his way to his desk, ignoring the half-eaten protein bar from yesterday and the family photo he couldn't bring himself to look at. "Thompson!" A voice called out from across the office. It was Lisa Chen, his best engineer and right hand in the safety systems team. "We've got a situation." Mike closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "Number three," he muttered to himself. "What's wrong?" Lisa hurried over, tablet in hand, her usual composed demeanor showing cracks of concern. "Remember those simulation results we were waiting on? The ones for the modified heat shield integration? Please tell me they're within acceptable parameters." Lisa bit her lip. "They're not great. We're seeing potential failure points under maximum stress scenarios. The current design. It might not hold up during critical phases of ascent." Mike dropped into his chair, running both hands through his already disheveled hair. "Show me." For the next hour, they pored over the data. The rest of the team trickled in, adding their insights and concerns. The conference room quickly filled with coffee cups and technical diagrams as they desperately sought a solution that wouldn't set them back to square one. "Okay, listen up." Mike addressed his team, standing at the whiteboard covered in calculations and diagrams. "We've got two options. We either push back the review and request another month for redesign." "Management will never go for that," interrupted Tom from structural analysis. "They're already breathing down our necks about deadlines." "Or," Mike continued, "we work straight through and try to find a fix before the review this afternoon. I know I'm asking a lot, especially since—" "We're with you, Mike." Lisa cut in, determination written across her face. "Whatever you need." The team spread out, each taking a different aspect of the problem. Hours blurred together in a caffeine-fueled rush of calculations, simulations, and heated debates over technical specifications. Mike lost count of how many times he'd refilled his coffee cup. Around noon, Sarah tried calling. Mike stared at her contact photo, them laughing together at their favorite beach in San Diego, before declining the call. He couldn't deal with that right now. Max's vet called too, but it went to voicemail. He'd check it later. Right now, he had to focus. "Mike," Lisa's voice cut through his thoughts. "Someone from management is here about the review." Looking up from his computer screen, Mike saw a tall man in a plain black t-shirt and jeans walking through the engineering department. Something about him seemed vaguely familiar, but Mike's exhausted brain couldn't place him. The man was accompanied by several executives in more formal attire, who kept glancing at him with an odd mix of deference and anxiety. "Mr. Thompson," one of the suits called out, "we'd like to discuss some concerns about your team's safety protocols." Mike stood up, straightening his wrinkled shirt. "Of course, let me pull up our latest data." Actually, the tall man in the t-shirt spoke, his voice carrying a slight South African accent. "I've already reviewed your previous submissions. I think we're being too conservative with the safety margins." Mike felt something snap inside him. All the stress, pain, and frustration of the past 24 hours crystallized into a sharp point of anger. "Too conservative?" he repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "Yes," the man continued, seemingly oblivious to Mike's tone. "We need to optimize for efficiency and performance. Your current safety factors are." "No." Mike's response echoed through the suddenly silent office. "Excuse me?" I said no. Mike stepped forward, his hands shaking. "Do you have any idea what we're dealing with here? These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. These are people's lives." Lisa touched his arm. "Mike, maybe we should." He shrugged her off. "No, he needs to hear this. My team has spent 6 months, perfecting these protocols. We've run thousands of simulations. We've checked and double-checked every calculation, and you want to tell me we're being too careful?" The man in the t-shirt stood quietly, hands in his pockets, watching Mike with an unreadable expression. The executives behind him looked horrified, but Mike was beyond caring. "You want to know why I'm so insistent on these safety margins?" Mike's voice cracked with emotion. 20 years ago, my father worked at a manufacturing plant. Some hotshot manager decided their safety protocols were too conservative, decided they were cutting into profits. Want to know what happened? The room was dead silent now. Every eye was fixed on Mike as tears began rolling down his cheeks. They buried him on a Tuesday. Closed casket. I was 17, had to watch my mom try to hold it together through the funeral. Had to hear people talk about how it was just an accident. Except it wasn't an accident, it was corner cutting. It was someone deciding that safety protocols were too conservative. Mike wiped his eyes angrily. "So no, I don't care who you are or what fancy business school you went to. I'm not signing off on any changes that compromise these safety protocols. Not today. Not ever. You want to fire me? Go ahead. I'd rather be unemployed than have someone's death on my conscience." The tall man tilted his head slightly, studying Mike with intense interest. "Who do you think I am?" he asked quietly. "Some overpaid executive who's never had to worry about the consequences of his decisions." Mike spat. "Someone who sees people as numbers on a spreadsheet. Well, let me tell you something. I'm Elon Musk." The words hit Mike like a physical blow. His anger evaporated instantly, replaced by a cold wave of horror as his brain finally registered why the man had seemed familiar. All those news articles, interviews, videos, now playing through his mind in a terrible slideshow of recognition. His legs went weak. He grabbed the edge of his desk to steady himself, papers sliding to the floor unnoticed. The room started spinning as the full impact of what had just happened crashed over him. He'd just spent 10 minutes screaming at Elon Musk, his boss, the founder and CEO of the company, the man who could end his career with a single word. I, Mike stammered, his voice barely a whisper. The tears of anger were replaced by tears of mortification. "Mr. Musk, I." The room remained frozen in shocked silence, everyone waiting to see what would happen next. Mike's career, his entire future in the aerospace industry, hung by a thread, and he knew it. All he could think about was how he'd let down his team, how he'd thrown away everything he'd worked for, all because he couldn't keep his emotions in check on the worst day of his life. The weight of it all, Sarah leaving, Max being sick, and now this came crashing down on him at once. His legs finally gave out, and he sank into his chair, burying his face in his hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. In his mind, he was already calculating how long his savings would last. wondering if any other aerospace companies would hire someone who'd had a meltdown in front of Elon Musk, trying to figure out how he'd pay for Max's treatments without a job. The silence stretched on, seemingly endless, until... "Stand up, Mr. Thompson." The words cut through Mike's spiral of despair. He slowly raised his head, wiping his eyes with his sleeve, and forced himself to stand on shaky legs. He couldn't bring himself to meet Musk's gaze. "Look at me," Musk said quietly. Mike took a deep breath and lifted his eyes, expecting to see anger or contempt. Instead, Musk's expression was thoughtful, almost intrigued. "How long have you been working on these safety protocols?" Musk asked. 6 months, sir," Mike managed to say. "Our team. We've been working around the clock to ensure." "Show me." Mike blinked in confusion. "Sir?" "Show me exactly why you think these safety margins are necessary. Convince me." Musk pulled up a chair and sat down, leaning forward with genuine interest. "And stop calling me sir. Elon is fine." Lisa quickly pulled up the simulation data on the main screen while Mike, still trembling slightly, began explaining their findings. As he spoke about the technical details, his voice grew steadier, his expertise taking over despite his emotional state. Here, Mike pointed to a particular set of calculations, his earlier passion returning, albeit more controlled. Under maximum stress conditions, if we reduce the safety margin as proposed, there's a 0.3% chance of catastrophic failure during ascent. "That's a small percentage," one of the executives interjected. Mike turned to him. "Would you put your children on that rocket?" The executive fell silent. "Continue," Elon said, his eyes fixed on the data. For the next hour, Mike and his team presented their research, explaining every decision, every calculation, every worst-case scenario they'd planned for. Elon asked pointed questions, challenging assumptions, demanding clarification on specific points. Other engineers from nearby departments had gathered to watch, the crowd growing as word spread through the facility. Mike was too focused on the technical discussion to notice his audience. Finally, Elon leaned back in his chair, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. The room held its breath. "You're right." Mike wasn't sure he'd heard correctly. What?" "You're right," Elon repeated, standing up. "Your safety protocols stay as they are." In fact, he turned to the executives hovering nearby. "I want similar analysis done for all critical systems. If Mr. Thompson's team can find these potential failure points, I want to know what else we might be missing." Mike felt lightheaded with relief. His legs threatened to give out again, but this time Lisa was there, supporting his elbow discreetly. "And Mr. Thompson?" Elon added, turning back to face him. Yes, Elon? I'm doubling your team's budget. I want you to hire more engineers, and I want weekly reports sent directly to me about any safety concerns you identify." A slight smile crossed his face. "It seems we need more people who aren't afraid to tell me I'm wrong." The gathered crowd broke into spontaneous applause. Mike stood there, stunned, as people began congratulating him. Someone pressed a fresh cup of coffee into his hands. "Oh, and Mike?" Elon had started to walk away but turned back. "Take tomorrow off. You look like you could use some rest. And..." He paused. "I hope your dog gets better." Mike stared after him, wondering how he knew about Max, then remembered his earlier conversation with Jerry must have made its way up the grapevine. As the excitement died down and people returned to their work, Lisa squeezed his shoulder. "You okay?" Mike nodded slowly, still processing everything that had happened. His phone buzzed, another call from the vet. This time, he answered it. "Mr. Thompson, good news about Max." The next morning, despite Elon's suggestion to take the day off, Mike found himself back at SpaceX. This time, though, he wasn't alone. Max was lying contentedly at his feet, sporting a cone of shame but very much alive and cancer-free. What the vet had initially feared was malignant turned out to be a benign cyst. "You really can't stay away, can you?" Jerry called out as Mike signed Max in as a visitor. "Had to show off our recovering patient?" Mike grinned, gesturing to Max, who thumped his tail at the attention. Besides, after yesterday, I kind of need to face everyone. Oh man, Jerry chuckled, coming around his desk to pet Max. You're basically a legend now. Did you really make Musk back down on a decision? Mike groaned. Please, tell me everyone isn't talking about it. Are you kidding? It's all over the company Slack channels. The engineer who stood up to Elon, that's what they're calling you. Perfect, Mike muttered. Just perfect. As he walked through the facility with Max trotting beside him, people kept stopping to greet them. Some wanted to pet Max, others wanted to congratulate Mike on yesterday's events, and a few brave souls even asked for his advice on handling difficult conversations with management. Mike, Lisa's voice cut through the small crowd that had gathered around his desk. You're supposed to be at home. I know. He held up his hands in surrender. I just came to grab some files and show everyone that Max is okay. Then we're heading home, right, buddy? Max woofed in agreement. Lisa crossed her arms. Uh-huh. And these files couldn't wait until tomorrow because? Because, Mike started, but was interrupted by a commotion near the entrance. Elon Musk had just walked in, surrounded by his usual entourage of executives and assistants. Mike's heart rate spiked, yesterday's embarrassment flooding back. He quickly tried to gather his things, hoping to make a subtle exit. Too late, Lisa whispered. He's seen you. Indeed, Elon was already heading their way, the crowd parting before him like the Red Sea. Mike straightened up, trying to look professional despite his casual clothes and the dog at his feet. Mr. Thompson, Elon said, then looked down at Max with raised eyebrows. I thought I told you to take the day off. Yes, about that, Mike stammered. I just came to. He was interrupted by Max, who had decided that the billionaire CEO looked friendly enough and padded over to sniff his shoes. The executives tensed, but Elon just crouched down to Max's level. So this is the dog I heard about, he said, scratching behind Max's ears. The cone made it a bit awkward, but Max didn't seem to mind. Feeling better? Much better, Mike answered, relieved that Max hadn't done anything embarrassing. False alarm at the vet, thankfully. Good to hear. Elon stood up. Since you're here anyway, walk with me. Bring your friend, he added, nodding at Max. Mike shot a panicked look at Lisa, who made shooing motions with her hands. He fell into step beside Elon, trying to keep Max from tangling their legs with his leash. I've been thinking about yesterday, Elon began as they walked through the facility. Mike's stomach dropped. Sir, Elon, I want to apologize again for my behavior. I was completely out of line and… Actually, Elon interrupted, I wanted to thank you. Mike nearly tripped over his own feet. Thank me? They had reached a quieter part of the building, away from the curious eyes of other employees. Elon stopped and turned to face him. Do you know what the biggest danger to innovation is, Mr. Thompson? Insufficient funding? Elon shook his head. Yes, men. People who are so afraid of losing their jobs that they'll agree with anything their boss says. People who see problems but stay quiet because they don't want to rock the boat. He leaned against the wall, hands in his pockets, a gesture Mike now recognized as characteristic. Yesterday, you knew who I was, right? Even before I said it? Mike nodded slowly. I had a feeling. You looked familiar, but I was too upset to really process it. Yet you stood your ground. You were willing to risk your job to protect our safety standards. That's rare, Mr. Thompson, very rare. Max had settled down between them, cone bumping against Mike's leg as he looked back and forth between the two humans. I've been reviewing your personnel file, Elon continued. Top of your class at MIT, multiple patents, turned down offers from Blue Origin and NASA to work here. Impressive record. Thank you, Mike said cautiously, wondering where this was going. I'm creating a new division, Elon announced. Safety and innovation integration. The goal is to find ways to push boundaries without compromising safety. I want you to run it. Mike stared at him. What? You'll have full autonomy, your own team, and a direct line to me for any concerns. Salary increase, of course, and I can't, Mike blurted out. Elon raised an eyebrow. Can't? Mike took a deep breath. Yesterday, when I yelled at you, that wasn't just about safety protocols. My wife left me the night before. My dog was sick. I was emotional, exhausted, and I took it out on you. That's not who I usually am. I know, Elon said simply. I told you, I read your file. Excellent performance reviews, well liked by your team. No history of outbursts or insubordination. Which makes what you did yesterday even more impressive. He pushed off from the wall and started walking again. Mike and Max hurried to keep up. Let me tell you a story, Elon said as they walked. Back in the early days of SpaceX, we had 3 failed launches in a row. Everyone said it was impossible, that private companies couldn't succeed in space. We were nearly bankrupt. Know what kept me going? Mike shook his head. The belief that we couldn't afford to fail, that what we were doing was too important to give up on. That's what I heard in your voice yesterday, not just anger, but conviction. The absolute certainty that what you were fighting for mattered. They had reached a window overlooking the factory floor, where a massive rocket engine was being assembled. Every person down there, Elon gestured at the workers below, is someone's family, someone's parent, child, spouse. They trust us with their lives every time they step into this building. I need someone who will never forget that. Someone who will fight for their safety, even if it means fighting me. Mike watched the activity below, thinking about his father, about Sarah, about all the times he'd put his work ahead of his personal life because he believed in what they were doing here. Sarah left because she said, I care more about rockets than my marriage, he said quietly. Do you? Mike looked at Max, who gazed back with unconditional love despite his ridiculous cone. I care about doing what's right. About making sure no other kid has to grow up without a parent because someone decided safety wasn't important enough. That's why I want you for this position, Elon said. Not despite yesterday's outburst, but because of it. Because you proved you'll stand up for what's right, no matter the personal cost. A group of tours was approaching their location. Elon straightened up. Think about it, he said. Let me know by the end of the week. And Mr. Thompson? Yes? Go home. Take care of your dog. Deal with your personal life. The position will still be here when you're ready. As Elon walked away to greet the tour group, Mike stood at the window, absently petting Max. His phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Can we talk? Maybe, he thought, looking down at the factory floor where his team was implementing the safety protocols he'd fought so hard to protect, it was time to find a better balance. To prove that caring about rockets and caring about people weren't mutually exclusive. Come on, Max, he said, tugging gently on the leash. Let's go home. As they walked back through the facility, people smiled and waved, a few calling out, There goes our safety warrior. Max's tail wagged at all the attention, cone bobbing cheerfully. Jerry looked up as they approached the security desk. Leaving already? That's got to be a record for you. Mike smiled. Yeah, well, sometimes you need to know when to step back, even if just for a day. Wise words. Jerry nodded approvingly. You okay after everything that happened? Mike looked down at Max, thought about Sarah's text, about Elon's offer, about all the changes the past 2 days had brought. You know what? I think I will be. As they walked to his car, Mike's phone buzzed again. This time it was Lisa. So, should we start calling you boss now? Mike laughed, startling Max. For the first time since Sarah left, since the whole crazy series of events began, he felt like things might actually work out. Mike sat in his car for a long moment, Max panting happily in the passenger seat. He stared at Sarah's text message. Can we talk? What do you think, buddy? He asked Max, who tilted his head, making the cone scrape against the car window. Should I answer her? His finger hovered over the keyboard when another message came through, this time from Elon. One more thing. Review these safety proposals when you're back. Only if you want the job, of course. Attached were several documents that made Mike's engineering mind itch with curiosity. He caught himself starting to open them and quickly locked his phone. No, he said firmly to himself, not today. He was about to start the car when a knock on his window made him jump. It was Lisa, slightly out of breath. "Sorry," she said as he rolled down the window, "but you need to see this." She thrust her tablet through the window. On it was the company's internal message board, already flooded with responses to yesterday's events. Mike's eyes widened as he scrolled. Finally, someone stood up to the impossible deadlines. "Thompson for president. My husband works in production. Thank you for fighting for his safety. This is why I love working at SpaceX." "There's hundreds more," Lisa said. "You've started something, Mike. People are speaking up about safety concerns they've been afraid to raise." Mike handed the tablet back, feeling overwhelmed. "I never meant to start a movement. I just lost my temper." "Sometimes that's all it takes." Lisa glanced at Max, who was trying to lick her through the window despite his cone. "Hey, why don't you come over for dinner tonight? James is grilling, and the kids would love to play with Max." "I don't know," Mike hesitated, thinking about Sarah's text. "Come on, you shouldn't be alone right now. Besides," she grinned, "we need to discuss your new division. I'm thinking Department of Telling Elon He's Wrong has a nice ring to it." Mike couldn't help but laugh. That's definitely not going to be the name. "Safety and innovation integration is so boring, though," Lisa protested. "At least let me make some t-shirts with 'I stood up to Elon and all I got was a promotion.'" "Lisa, too soon?" Max barked, apparently voting in favor of dinner plans. "Fine," Mike conceded, "but no work talk and no t-shirts." "No promises on the t-shirts," Lisa called as she walked away. "Dinner's at 7." Mike finally started his car, but before he could put it in gear, his phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Mr. Thompson?" A familiar South African accent. "One last thing I forgot to mention." Mike sat up straighter. "Yes, Elon? That percentage you quoted yesterday about catastrophic failure? It wasn't 0.3%. Mike's heart stopped. Had he made a mistake? Had his emotional state caused him to misread the data? "I checked the calculations myself last night," Elon continued. "It was 0.312%. You rounded down, making the risk seem smaller than it actually was. Why?" Mike swallowed hard. Because I didn't want to seem like I was exaggerating the danger to make my point. I thought being conservative with the number would make my argument stronger." There was a long pause on the other end. "That's exactly why I want you for this position." Elon finally said, "You don't just fight for safety, you fight fair. Even when you're angry, even when you're emotional, you still maintain your integrity." "Thank you," Mike managed to say. "One more question. What would you have done if I hadn't agreed with your assessment?" Mike didn't hesitate. "I would have quit, and then I would have sent my analysis to every relevant safety board and regulatory agency." A chuckle from the other end. "Perfect answer. Enjoy your day off, Mr. Thompson. I look forward to your decision." The line went dead. Mike sat there, processing the conversation, until Max nudged his arm with his cone-covered head. "Yeah, buddy," Mike scratched behind his ears. "It's been a weird couple of days." His phone buzzed again, Sarah's text still waiting for a response. Next to it, Elon's message with the safety proposals, and now Lisa's dinner invitation. 3 paths stretching out before him. The past with Sarah, the future with his new position, and the present moment with friends who cared about him. Max whined softly. "You're right," Mike said, finally putting the car in gear. "First things first, let's get that cone off your head. Then we'll figure out the rest." As they drove away from SpaceX, Mike caught a glimpse of the facility in his rearview mirror, the place where he'd had the biggest meltdown and the biggest triumph of his career within the span of 24 hours. The vet visit was quick and successful. Max was officially cone-free and healing perfectly. As Mike drove to Lisa's house for dinner, his phone sat heavy in his pocket, Sarah's text still unanswered. He thought back to that morning's interaction with Elon, still trying to process everything that had happened. "You're early," Lisa called from her front porch as Mike pulled up. Her two kids, Emma and Tyler, raced down the driveway. "Can Max play with us?" Emma bounced excitedly as Mike let Max out of the car. "Gentle, remember?" Mike cautioned. "He's still recovering." "We'll be super careful," Tyler promised solemnly. "Come on, Max, we got you a new ball." Mike watched as Max trotted after the kids into the backyard, his tail wagging. "He seems happier without the cone," Lisa observed, handing Mike a beer. "You, on the other hand, still look stressed." Sarah texted. "Ah." Lisa leaned against the porch railing. "What did she say?" "Just, can we talk?" Mike took a long sip of his beer. "Haven't answered yet." "Mind if I ask why?" Mike watched the kids playing with Max in the yard. "Because I'm not sure what I want to say. Yesterday, I was ready to beg her to come back. Today. Today? Today I stood up to Elon Musk, got offered a promotion, started some kind of safety revolution at work. It's like, maybe the universe is telling me something." Lisa snorted. "The universe doesn't send messages through Elon Musk." "James firing up that grill or what?" Mike changed the subject, not ready to delve deeper into his marital issues. "Mike," James's voice boomed from around the corner, "get back here and tell me how you made the richest man in the world back down." The backyard was cozy, strung with fairy lights and centered around a massive grill where James, Lisa's husband, was holding court with tongs in one hand and a beer in the other. "There's our resident revolutionary," James grinned. "The kids are already planning their protest signs for better lunch options in the SpaceX cafeteria." "Dad," Emma called from where she was playing with Max, "can we get t-shirts like Aunt Lisa's planning?" Mike groaned. "You weren't kidding about the t-shirts?" "Already ordered," Lisa said smugly. "Should be here next week." The evening progressed pleasantly, with good food and better company. Mike found himself relaxing for the first time in days, watching Max play with the kids while trading stories with Lisa and James. Then his phone rang. The screen displayed Sarah. The conversation around the table died. Even the kids seemed to sense the tension, pausing in their game with Max. "You should answer it," Lisa said gently. Mike stared at the phone for another ring, then stood up. "I'll be right back." He walked to the front yard, heart pounding. Max tried to follow, but Emma distracted him with the new ball. Taking a deep breath, Mike answered. "Hello?" "Hi." Sarah's voice was soft, uncertain. I saw the news." "The news?" "About you and Elon Musk. It's all over social media. Someone filmed it on their phone." Mike closed his eyes. "Great. Just great." "No, Mike, listen." Sarah's voice grew stronger. "That man I saw in the video, the one who stood up for what he believed in, who was willing to lose everything to protect others, that's the man I fell in love with." Mike sat down on Lisa's front steps. "Sarah." "I was wrong," she continued. "When I said you cared more about rockets than me, you care about people, you always have. I forgot that somewhere along the way. You still left." "I did, and maybe I needed to remember why I loved you in the first place." She paused. "I heard about Max too. Is he okay?" "He's fine. False alarm." "Good. That's good." Another pause. "Mike?" "Yeah?" "That offer Musk made you, about heading the new safety division. Are you going to take it?" Mike looked back toward the backyard, where he could hear laughter and the sizzle of the grill. "I haven't decided yet." "You should. It's perfect for you." Her voice cracked slightly. "You've always been meant for big things, Mike. I just wish I'd been strong enough to stand beside you while you achieve them." "Sarah." "I miss you," she blurted out. "I know I have no right to say that after leaving, but—" A commotion from the backyard interrupted them. Mike heard Emma screaming his name. "I have to go," he said quickly. "Something's wrong." He ran to the backyard to find Max lying motionless near the grill, the kids crying while Lisa tried to calm them, and James was already on the phone with the emergency vet. "What happened?" Mike demanded, kneeling beside Max. He just collapsed, Lisa explained, holding back tears. He was playing 1 minute and then. The vet says bring him in immediately, James reported, hanging up. I'll drive. The next hour was a blur. The emergency vet, different from the one they'd visited that morning, ran tests while Mike paced the waiting room. Lisa had stayed behind with the kids, but James waited with him, a solid, quiet presence. Finally, the vet emerged. Mr. Thompson? Mike's heart stopped at her grave expression. The good news is, we caught it in time. The bad news is, the morning vet missed something serious. There's internal bleeding that wasn't visible in the initial scans. But you can fix it? Mike's voice shook. Yes, but he needs surgery. Right now. And… She hesitated. It's expensive. Money's not an issue, a familiar voice said from behind them. Mike spun around to find Elon Musk standing in the emergency vet's waiting room, still in his black t-shirt from earlier. How? What? Mike stammered. Lisa called me, Elon explained. Said you might need help. Whatever the cost, SpaceX will cover it. But why? Elon's expression softened slightly. Because you were willing to risk everything to keep others safe. Seems only fair we do the same for you. He turned to the stunned vet. Get started. Send the bill to my office. The vet hurried away to prep for surgery, leaving Mike standing there, overwhelmed by the day's events. Thank you, he managed to say. I don't know how to. Just focus on your dog. Elon cut him off. Oh, and Thompson? Yes? When you come back to work, assuming you take the position, we need to talk about implementing mandatory second opinions for all critical safety inspections. He smiled slightly. Seems like a gap in our protocols. With that, he was gone, leaving Mike to sink into a waiting room chair, emotionally exhausted. So, James said after a while, just another normal day at SpaceX? Mike laughed despite himself. Yeah, just another day. His phone buzzed. Sarah again. Is Max okay? Do you need me there? Mike stared at Sarah's text for a long moment before responding. He's in surgery. Don't know yet. The reply was immediate. I'm coming. Sarah's on her way, Mike told James, not sure how he felt about that. James squeezed his shoulder. Want me to stay until she gets here? Mike shook his head. Go home to Lisa and the kids. They must be worried sick. Call if you need anything, James said, standing up. And Mike, for what it's worth, I think you're handling all this amazingly well. After James left, Mike sat alone in the sterile waiting room, the events of the past 2 days swirling in his mind. His confrontation with Elon seemed like it had happened in another lifetime. Now here he was, his dog in surgery, his estranged wife on the way, and his career potentially about to transform, all because he'd lost his temper at exactly the right moment. Mr. Thompson? A nurse emerged from the back. Max is in surgery now. Dr. Martinez says it's going well so far. Thank you, Mike managed to say. How? How long? At least another 2 hours. You should try to get some rest. Rest seemed impossible, but Mike leaned back in the uncomfortable chair, closing his eyes. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Lisa. Kids finally calmed down. Emma made Max a get-well card. How is he? Mike was typing a response when he heard the waiting room door open. He looked up to see Sarah standing there, still in her work clothes, mascara slightly smudged like she'd been crying. Hi, she said softly. Hi. They stared at each other awkwardly for a moment before Sarah sat down beside him, leaving one chair empty between them. Any news? He's in surgery. They found internal bleeding the morning vet missed. Mike's voice cracked. If he hadn't collapsed at Lisa's. Sarah reached across the empty chair between them and squeezed his hand. He's going to be okay. He's strong, just like his dad. Mike looked at their joined hands. Her wedding ring was still on. Sarah, about what you said on the phone. We don't have to talk about that now, she interrupted. Let's just focus on Max. They sat in silence for a while, hands still connected across the empty chair. Mike's phone kept buzzing with messages from concerned coworkers. Apparently, word had spread quickly about Max's condition. "You've become quite popular," Sarah observed as Mike's phone lit up again. "Yeah, well, screaming at Elon Musk will do that." "It wasn't just screaming," Sarah said quietly. "It was standing up for what's right. It was being the man I married." She paused. "The man I still love." Mike turned to look at her, really look at her for the first time since she'd arrived. Her eyes were red from crying, but there was something else there. Pride, maybe, and hope. "I was going to take the job," he said suddenly. "Was?" "Before all this happened with Max, I was going to text you back, tell you I needed to focus on my career right now, that maybe we needed time apart to figure things out." He laughed humorlessly. "Funny how life has other plans." Sarah shifted to the chair between them, eliminating the space that separated them. "Maybe life knows better than we do sometimes." "Mr. Thompson?" The nurse was back. "Dr. Martinez would like to speak with you." Mike stood up so quickly he felt dizzy. Sarah steadied him, her hand on his arm. "Want me to come with you?" He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. They followed the nurse through the double doors into a consultation room. Dr. Martinez was already there, still in her surgical scrubs. "The surgery was successful," she said before Mike could ask. "We found and repaired the bleeding. He's going to need careful monitoring and a lot of rest, but he should make a full recovery." Mike's legs gave out and he sank into a chair. Sarah's arms were around him immediately as he broke down, all the stress and emotion of the past 2 days finally overwhelming him. "When can we see him?" Sarah asked, still holding Mike. "He's in recovery now. Give us about 30 minutes to get him settled. Then you can visit briefly. He'll need to stay here for at least 24 hours for observation." After the doctor left, Mike and Sarah sat together, his head on her shoulder as he pulled himself together. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "For what?" "For putting work first. For not seeing what it was doing to us. For—" Sarah put a finger to his lips. "And I'm sorry for not understanding why your work matters so much. For not seeing that your dedication to safety isn't just about rockets, it's about people. About families." She took a deep breath. "About making sure no one else loses someone they love to a preventable accident." Mike looked at her in surprise. "How did you—" "I watched the whole video, Mike. The part about your dad. I never knew that's why you became an engineer, why you're so passionate about safety protocols." "I should have told you." "Yes, you should have." She took his hand again. "But I should have asked. Should have tried to understand instead of just getting angry and leaving." Mike's phone buzzed yet again. This time it was Elon. "How's the patient?" As Mike typed a quick update, Sarah read over his shoulder. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "maybe this new position is exactly what we need. A fresh start. A chance to find the right balance together." "Together?" Sarah smiled, tears in her eyes. "If you'll have me back, I know I hurt you by leaving, and we have a lot to work through, but—" Mike kissed her, cutting off her words. When they finally pulled apart, they were both crying and laughing at the same time. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson?" The nurse was back. "You can see Max now." 1 week later, Mike stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie for the 3rd time. Max watched from his bed in the corner, almost fully recovered and sporting a new bandana that Emma had made him. "You look fine," Sarah called from the kitchen. She had moved back in 2 days ago, and the house already felt more alive. "Stop fidgeting." "It's my first day as division head," Mike replied, still fussing with his tie. "I need to look." "Like yourself." Sarah appeared in the doorway, coffee mug in hand. "That's who Elon promoted, remember? Not some stuffed shirt in a perfect tie." She had a point. Mike abandoned the tie altogether and opted for a clean button-down shirt instead. "Much better," Sarah approved. "Now come eat breakfast. Your safety revolution can wait until after eggs." As they sat at the kitchen table, something they hadn't done together in months, Mike's phone lit up with a text from Lisa. "Ready for the big day, boss?" "By the way," Sarah said, buttering her toast, "have you seen the t-shirts Lisa ordered?" Mike groaned. Please tell me she didn't really make them. Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out a black t-shirt. On the front, in SpaceX's font, it read, "Safety first, rockets second." On the back, even Elon knows it now, Thompson 2024. Oh God, Mike put his head in his hands. Please tell me people aren't wearing these at work. They're selling out, actually. Lisa says even some of the executives bought them. Sarah grinned. Rumor has it Elon himself has one. I'm doomed. The drive to SpaceX felt different that morning. Instead of his usual route to the engineering department, Mike parked in his new spot, right next to where Elon usually parked his Tesla. Jerry beamed as Mike walked in with Max. There's our safety warrior. Big day, huh? You too? Mike noticed Jerry was wearing one of Lisa's t-shirts under his security jacket. Hey, I'm Team Thompson all the way, Jerry laughed. Plus, my daughter works in production. Knowing someone's looking out for her safety, that means everything. Mike's new office was on the executive floor, a fact that still felt surreal. Lisa was waiting outside his door, tablet in hand and grinning like a Cheshire cat. Ready for your first executive meeting, Mr. Head of Safety and Innovation Integration? Could we maybe just call it Safety Division? Nope. Lisa handed him a stack of files. Too late. It's already on the org chart. And wait until you see your new business cards. Mike unlocked his office door and stopped short. The large windows overlooked the factory floor, but what caught his eye was his desk. It was covered in cards, notes, and small gifts from employees throughout the company. People wanted to show their support, Lisa explained softly. You've given them a voice they didn't know they had. Mike picked up one of the cards. Inside was a photo of a family, a SpaceX employee with his wife and kids. The note read, "Thank you for helping keep their daddy safe." Mike? Lisa's voice broke through his emotion. Meeting starts in 5 minutes, and Elon wants to see you first. Making sure Max was comfortable in his new office bed, a gift from the engineering team, Mike headed to Elon's office. The secretary waved him right in. Elon was standing at his window, looking out at the rocket assembly area below. Ah, Thompson, he turned as Mike entered. How's Max? Much better, thank you. And thank you again for covering the surgery. Elon waved him off. Consider it an investment in employee retention. Besides, he smiled slightly, can't have our new safety head distracted by vet bills. He gestured for Mike to join him at the window. See that down there? He pointed to where workers were carefully maneuvering a massive engine component. Every person on that floor has a story, a family, dreams, fears. When I started SpaceX, I was focused on the big picture, making humanity multiplanetary, advancing technology, pushing boundaries. He turned to face Mike. But you reminded me of something important. We can't achieve those big dreams if we don't take care of the people making them possible. That's why I took the job. Mike said, every safety protocol, every extra check, every delayed launch, it's all worth it if it means everyone goes home to their families at night. Elon nodded approvingly. Speaking of families, how are things with Sarah? Mike smiled. Better. We're working on finding the right balance. She's actually helping me plan some new safety initiatives. Good, because I need you focused. The next few months are going to be challenging. A lot of people resist change, even when it's for their own good. I'm ready. Are you? Elon raised an eyebrow. Even if it means standing up to me again? Mike thought about the cards on his desk, about Sarah, about Max, about his father. Especially then. Perfect answer. Elon checked his watch. Meeting's about to start. Oh, and Thompson? Yes? Elon opened a drawer and pulled out one of Lisa's t-shirts. Think we should make these official company merchandise? Mike laughed despite himself. Only if I get royalties. Deal. Elon headed for the door, then paused. You know, when you yelled at me that day, I was going to fire you. What changed your mind? You did. When you broke down crying but still didn't back down from your position, It showed me that you weren't just being stubborn or difficult, you genuinely cared. That's rare in this industry, he smiled. Plus, my mother always said I needed someone to keep me in check. The executive meeting went by in a blur of introductions and presentations. Mike noticed several of the executives wearing Lisa's t-shirts under their blazers, which somehow made the whole thing less intimidating. After the meeting, Mike returned to his office to find Max playing with Emma and Tyler. Lisa had apparently arranged for them to visit during lunch. "Uncle Mike," Emma ran to hug him. "Do you like your new office? We helped decorate." Indeed, he noticed several crayon drawings now adorning his walls, mostly featuring rockets and a very heroic-looking stick figure labeled Uncle Mike. "Look what else we made." Tyler pointed to a sign on the door. In careful letters, it read, "Department of Keeping Everyone Safe and Making Sure Uncle Mike Tells Elon When He's Wrong." "Lisa," Mike began. "Hey, don't look at me." Lisa held up her hands. "This was all them, although I might have helped with the spelling." Sarah arrived with lunch for everyone, and soon Mike's official executive office had turned into an impromptu picnic spot, with Max going from person to person collecting treats. "So," Sarah said as they watched the kids playing with Max, "still wondering if you made the right decision?" Mike looked around his office, at the cards from grateful employees, the children's drawings, his dog happy and healthy, his wife back by his side, and yes, even the slightly ridiculous t-shirts that had somehow become a symbol of positive change. "No," he said, pulling her close. "I think everything is exactly where it's supposed to be." Just then, his phone buzzed with a text from Elon. "Emergency safety review needed in production. Bring your dog and wear the t-shirt." Mike laughed and showed Sarah the message. "The adventures continue?" she asked. "Always," Mike replied, reaching for one of Lisa's t-shirts. "But this time, I've got my priorities straight." As he headed out with Max trotting beside him, Mike couldn't help but smile at how much his life had changed in just a few days. One moment of standing up for what he believed in had transformed not just his career, but his entire perspective on what really mattered. And somewhere, he hoped his father was proud.